Good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to this webinar on gender-responsive GCF readiness in Africa. My name is Titi Akosa. I work for Center for 21st Century Issues, Nigeria, and I'm the GCF Gender Monitor for Anglophone Africa. This webinar is supported by Women Environment and Development Organization and Both Hands. Yeah, and this webinar is one of the activities on our project called the Participation is Power, Women Demand Gender Just Climate Finance. This project is a joint project of WEDO and Both Hands. The gender monitors coordinate regional networks in Africa, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. And they also participate in the GCF board meetings that holds in Songdo. The African gender monitors work with country gender monitors across Africa to give information about what is happening at the global GCF CF2 observer meetings in Korea, and to also give information to country monitors. Yeah, the African monitors act as go between the local monitors and the GCF CSO observer at the global GCF level. In Africa, we have 2 gender monitors, one for Anglophone and one for Francophone. And the 2 monitors coordinate the African networks. One of the basic aims of the African Gender Monitor is to mobilize active participation of African women for gender-responsive climate finance and access to the GCF through a country-driven approach. Our mandate is broad because it's about climate finance. It's not also limited to the Green Climate Fund. It's really looking at climate finance broadly and how women and men can benefit equally from that process. Today, we are going to talk about the Readiness Preparatory Support Program of the Green Climate Fund and how gender can be mainstreamed into that process. But first of all, it is important for us to know what the Green Climate is all about, the readiness, what it's all about. The Green Climate Fund is the designated multilateral financing channel under the UNFCCC and is the main financial mechanism to implement the Paris Agreement and assist developing country parties in implementing their nationally determined contributions. A lot of us will recall that the nationally determined contributions were submitted to the UNFCCC in the lead to the Paris Climate Agreement. And after the Paris Climate Agreement was entered into, the nationally determined contributions become binding on the countries because it was driven by the country themselves. They put it together and it was submitted to the UNFCCC. So the nationally determined contributions needed to be implemented, and the UNFCCC has designated the Green Climate Fund as the main financial mechanism to implement the Paris Agreement. For the GCF Readiness Support Program, which is also referred to as Readiness or Readiness Program, it is an important program of assistance to help countries get ready. As the name suggests, it helps you to get ready to get the GCF funds or to access the finance. It helps you to ensure that you meet up with all the standards of the GCF that will enable you access the funds. It is part of the GCF funding and support modalities aimed at helping countries advance their climate change adaptation and mitigation priorities. The readiness programs, according to the board decision, the 8th board meeting, that was a decision that was taken during the 8th board meeting of the GCF. It aims to support country ownership and also align GCF investment by strengthening the institutional capacity of national designated authorities or focal points and direct access accredited entities to enable them prioritize and oversee development and implementation of country-driven strategies and low emission and climate resilient interventions. This is a very important mandate coming from the board with regards to the preparatory program. It is driven by the national designated authorities, and the national designated authorities, they are the authorities at country levels that are connected to the Green Climate Fund. In some countries, some of them are, the NDA is domiciled in the Ministry of Environment. In some countries, it is domiciled in the Ministry of Climate Change. Some countries have Ministry of Climate Change. In some other countries, it is domiciled in the Ministry of Finance, depending on the country context. That is where that is how they take the position of the NDA, depending on how the country wants its climate finance issues to be addressed. So also, that is how their NDAs are also designated. So in different countries, they have different ministries in which the NDAs reside, and they are always direct contact to the GCF in terms of GCF access and financing for countries. The readiness support has 5 basic focal areas. At the initial stage, when it started, it has a area of strengthening the NDA and focal points, strategic framework, accreditation of implementing entities, pipeline development, information and experience sharing. Those were the initial focal areas when the fund started. And then in recent times, over a period of 4 to 3 years now, it has been revised based on realities on ground and based on experiences from the ground, from countries that have assessed the readiness support program. So some of the outcomes from that review is now informing a new work program which has been developed by the GCF and which has been imputed into the new readiness support program for 2019 to 2021. And from the revised readiness program, we have a revised focus for the readiness support, or perhaps an objective which is different from the way it is before now. We have it reformulated into capacity building for climate finance coordination. The second is the strategies for climate finance implementation. The third, national adaptation plans or adaptation planning processes. The fourth is the paradigm shifting pipeline development. And the fifth is the knowledge sharing and learning. It should be noted that the revised readiness program is expected to guide countries toward a long-term approach to readiness support, because these new strategies provide a vision and objectives at the program level with outcomes and indicative outputs, which was not in the strategies, the initial strategy of the preparatory support program. Then how is this readiness support delivered? The GCF has funds dedicated for the readiness support, and developing countries are expected to request for these funds to get themselves ready to access the Green Climate Funds. So all the developing countries are eligible to request for readiness support. The program is driven at the country level by governments to the NDAs and FPs. It's a country-driven program. And some of the steps you will need to assess the readiness support, the first step is to request for that readiness support through the GCF Secretariat. And after you make that request, The NDA will also ask for, it will develop a concept note for readiness, which should state the request and the objectives it will achieve. This is very important because your concept note will show the vision and the objectives for which you are requesting the readiness. After this step, the next step is the concept note will be reviewed by top management of the GCF. And after this review, and if they think it is appropriate for the concept note to be approved, it will be approved. After the approval of the concept note, there's a shorter proposal that includes the cost, outputs, and impacts of the readiness effort will be sent to the GCF. That's the proposal, the cost, outputs, that is what you expect to get out of it, what impact do you want it to have, what focal area are you looking at for your readiness effort, and these are going to be included in that short proposal. And then the readiness can be delivered to partners such as the UN agencies, the MDBs. It could also be done by the NDAs themselves of the focal points, or perhaps national local consultants who have the relevant expertise to do that. But one thing is very certain, that whoever is going to help in the delivery process must have the relevant expertise to do that when it comes to hiring a consultant to do that. And they must also be able to meet up with all the standards of the GCF to be able to ensure that the readiness support is delivered. How is gender mainstreamed into this readiness program? And this is the real crux of the topic today. But first, we need to understand gender in the GCF. The Durban decision approved GCF governing instrument with key references to gender. The GCF is the first climate fund that mandated gender mainstreaming consideration from its outset. Other funding mechanisms did not set out to have gender, but eventually they had gender along the way. But for GCF, that is not the case. The GCF, as from the word go, mainstreamed gender, and gender consideration was part of it. And this is rooted in the GCF mandate to encourage a paradigm shift towards low emission and climate resilient development pathways. In the guiding principles of the GCF, Article 3, it talks about gender responsiveness as a cross-cutting issue. Then it also talks about gender in the stakeholder involvement to develop the fund priorities. And women are a very crucial group for input and participation in the design, decision, and implementation of strategies and activities of the fund. So you check Article 75. Then in 2015, the GCF adopted a gender policy and action plan. The policy helps to ensure that GCF interventions and financing benefits women and men equally. That is the primary objective of that action plan. And then the gender policy provides that GCF projects and programs support initiatives addressing the inequity of climate change impacts and provide gender-sensitive solutions to climate change mitigation, adaptation, or readiness. And these are some of this is a provision from the gender policy. So the gender policy has been used to date, and it has also, over the years, it has evolved. And at a particular point, gender action plan was part of funding proposals at the GCF board. So it was mandatory for all funding proposals to have a gender action plan in their funding proposal for it also to be approved at the board level. So this has been ongoing, and a lot of countries have been putting a gender action plan to their funding proposals. In the last 1 year, the action plan has been reviewed, and as by 23rd board meeting of the GCF in July, that action plan is going to be discussed and properly be adopted. Over the years, different countries have assessed the readiness support funds through the GCF. And there are some lessons that have been learned through this process in how the readiness program has been deployed in mainstreaming gender. Recently, an independent evaluation of the readiness program was conducted by the GCF. And there are so many revelations from this review, which for me, it's not too good for Africa in terms of mainstreaming gender into the readiness processes. As of 13th of July 2018, about 114 grants in 85 countries had been disbursed, representing 69% of the grants to 78 of the countries that had received the readiness grants. Of all the readiness grants approved, Africa has about 42, which is the highest from across the regions of the world. Africa has the highest number, which is 42 of approved grants for readiness. But the disbursement, they've only gotten about 26% share of the approved amount that has been, the amount that has been disbursed. And this is lower than what has been disbursed in Asia Pacific region, and is slightly higher than the share of disbursements for Latin America, which is about 37%. In looking at gender in the preparatory processes in the countries that have assessed the preparatory support, there are some outcomes from the independent review, which shows a clearer picture of what is happening in Africa relating to mainstreaming of gender. Most countries in Africa are yet to fully integrate climate change, gender into their readiness support. For instance, only 1 of 9 readiness support projects in Africa fully integrated gender equality, compared with 2 projects each in Latin America and Asia. And there are some questions posed to the countries that have assessed the readiness support program, and some of those responses to some of the questions shows that Africa may be lagging behind with respect to mainstreaming gender in her readiness processes compared to other regions of the world like Latin America, Asia, and the Pacific. About 14% of respondents in Africa strongly agree that the readiness support enabled their access to gender experts, compared to 67% for Asia and Pacific and 55% for Latin America. That is lower than other regions. And then about 57 of NDAs and focal points in Africa also strongly agree, or actually agree, that their support program supported activities were intentionally aligned with the GCF gender policy and the action plan. This is very interesting because the gender policy and action plan are standard, they are the gender standards for all GCF programs and activities, and all these programs and activities are supposed to conform to this gender policy and action plan. And if our NDAs from Africa are saying that there are very few, about 50-something% of their activities were intentionally aligned with the GCF gender policy and action plans, it shows that the intention really to actually mainstream gender is not much there. How has gender been mainstreamed in readiness program in Africa? This is part of the outcomes of the independent evaluation review of the readiness program. They found that Africa may be lagging behind with respect to mainstreaming gender in our readiness processes compared to Latin America, Asia, and the Pacific. And these are the reasons why. Only one of 9 readiness program projects in Africa fully integrated gender equality compared to 2 projects each in Latin America and Asia. At least in Latin America and Asia, they still have about 2 readiness projects that fully integrate gender equality. And if you look at the table there, you will see the countries. We have 9 countries there. Kenya in Africa, who has fully integrated gender in their readiness program. And if you may know that as of now, Kenya already have their direct access entity in place. They have gone through the readiness process, and they are already developing a funding proposal to be sent to the GCF. Some other African countries are still at the level of the readiness preparatory support stage. Some of them are still going through the country programming, while some others are trying to ensure that they have a robust stakeholder engagement. Some are still trying to identify a national implementing entity that will be able to meet all the standards of the GCF. So some of these countries, they are different stages of their readiness support program. But based on the evaluation of the GCF, for now, we have, based on some of the countries that they reviewed during that process, Kenya came out as one of the countries that have been able to mainstream gender into their readiness processes. And how did they do this? This was done by including gender in project objectives and activities. So it means that at the level of the concept note, you must show the kind of gender objectives you want to have within the preparatory support programs. And they also have resources allocated for hiring a gender expert and implementing gender sensitive or specific activities. It's very important that during your preparatory processes, you have a gender expert to guide the process to ensure that gender is mainstream at every circle of the preparatory process, and ensure that money is adequately budgeted to ensure that gender expert work, and also to ensure that the specific activities are tailored towards ensuring gender mainstream. These are very, very important. And then there is another best practice which my colleague here, Jean from Germanwatch, is going to share with you, which is the GCF CSO Readiness. In Africa, it is another best practice that has supported gender responsive readiness program in Africa. And this project is implemented in Ghana, Morocco, Senegal, Malawi, and Cote d'Ivoire. I'm sure Jean, after my presentation, Jean is going to really talk to you more about how gender has been mainstreamed into that project across those countries in Africa. Then we have the GCF Gender Country Monitors, which it is what I am representing today. In Africa, we have 2. We have the Anglophone and the Francophone. And under the GCF Country Monitor, we've been engaging with NDAs, all our country monitors, because I coordinate the African-wide one. So we have monitors, gender monitors in African countries. We have about 12 of them now. And what they do is that we encourage and work with them to engage with their NDAs as we speak. So most of them have been engaging with their NDAs and trying to let them know that they're interested in the GCF processes in their country, and they're also interested in ensuring that gender is mainstream into that process. We have Ghana is working towards that, and one thing that is very, very interesting is that Ghana is also part of the GCF CSO Readiness Programme supported by Germanwatch. So we have women have been raising awareness with women and gender-focused organizations in their countries. It's also very important that in the readiness process, women organizations come together understand what the GCF is all about, and then begin to work with their NDAs and the processes, because it's very important for people to understand what the GCF is, what are the standards of the GCF with respect to gender, and then how they can use that knowledge to inform the country process. That is very, very key here. And that is what the gender country monitors are doing at the local level. In Nigeria, for instance, where I work, we have linked up with our NDA in Abuja. And during that discussion with him, we are able to find out that Nigeria is being put forward, is being proposed to be the national implementing entity for Nigeria. And they are even talking about getting a delivery partner. And we've been also talking to the proposed delivery partner to ensure that gender is mainstreamed immediately. So from the outset, we have been discussing with them. We're also engaging with other stakeholders like the private sector to raise awareness about the GCF and the Nigeria Readiness Processes. Those are some of the best practice we have, from what Kenya has done to what the GCF CSO Readiness is doing, and to what the GCF Gender Country Monitors are doing in Africa. Next slide. Then, what can women's rights advocates do to engage the readiness processes and ensure gender responsive GCF readiness? What are the strategic things that a women organization can do? And I think I dare say that even civil society organization, all civil society can do. Based on the outcomes of the independent evaluation of the readiness program, it is important that women and gender advocates get involved in the readiness processes because of the outcomes of that evaluation, which shows that we may be lagging behind. It is very important that we, as women organization and civil society, broader civil society, begin to get engaged in what is happening concerning GCF processes in our country. And this is also even beyond the readiness preparatory stages. Whatever stage you are in your country, you need to get involved. You need to make your interest known to your NDA or your focal point or NIEs if that has been in place. But if that has not been in place, it's very important that you begin to talk to your NDAs in your country. Offer gender expertise. Most of us have been in the gender mainstreaming space for a very long time. And we have acquired expertise, skills, and knowledge on how to mainstream gender. So this is the time we need to offer it into this process and ensure that the process benefits men and women equally. And then we need to collaborate, work with the broader civil society organization in your country, and then engage them, raise awareness with them, so you can collaboratively ensure that gender is mainstream into the readiness process. And you need to join the GCF Africa Gender Monitors in Africa. This is very important because there are so many important information that we send. One of the strategic things we do in the Gender Monitors network is that we send funding proposal that is slated for approval at the GCF board meeting, because all the monitors are supported to attend the GCF board meetings. So they will normally send those funding proposal to us ahead of time. And once they send it, we send it down to all our country monitors. Depending on the country the proposal is for, we send them to get feedback. We want to know whether they've been consulted. We want to know whether those issues that have been raised in the funding proposal are actually what they really wanted for their country. And if we have concerns, once it is raised from the local level, we send it directly to the CSO Observer Group, and we present it at the board level when that funding proposal is being presented. So then, what is our priority actions for readiness now? We need to prioritize some actions depending on the level in which you are in your country. Like I said, Kenya have done their readiness and they are trying to get their pipelines and funding proposal to the board, there are some things you need to do. We need to advocate for setting up of an inclusion of women in the technical committee of the NDA. It is a good practice. There are some good practices in terms of readiness processes that we got from different places. Some NDAs have a technical committee around them to help them decide on their no submission letter, to help them decide on some of the important funding proposals that have been brought in by international entities. International entities can also help countries to assess the climate funds. So if they have to assess it on behalf of the country, those proposals also need to be country driven. And that is why in some countries they have a committee around their NDA that helps them to do that. They call it technical committee. Of course, it could be called any other name. So far, the purpose is just to support and work with the NDA to ensure that all the proposals are country-driven. So when you're setting up that kind of committee, gender must be part. A gender expertise must be part. Expert must be part of that committee, which is very critical. And those are some of the advocacy we need to do on the ground. Then we can also do, in selecting the delivery partner, I have told you earlier that we could have a delivery partner help you to go through the whole process of the readiness. And the delivery partner, some of the criteria we need to put is to ensure that the delivery partner has gender expertise. Very, very important, because if you don't have gender expertise in delivering, it means that there will be a gap during the process. So if the delivery partner has gender expertise, that is very, very good and very important. We could also impress it on the NDA to ensure that when they are putting up the proposal, the concept note and everything, that during the budget process, they ensure that there is a budget for gender mainstreaming in the readiness process, and encourage an articulation of a gender action plan. We said that I am proposing it as some of the action that we could do at the local level, because at the board level, you cannot get your proposal through at the board level without a gender action plan. And I believe that, and these are some of the requirements. Yes, these are the requirements from the gender policy. And so if that is so, then at the local level, when we're doing our readiness, we could impress it upon them and encourage them to have a gender action plan as part of the readiness preparatory plan, so that it will be easy to begin to mainstream gender and ensure that gender is adequately taken account of in the readiness processes. So what are, like I said, what are our priority actions? I think I have done all that. And if you want to know more about gender in GCF and on readiness issues, we have some important resources, which is part of this. And as I go forward, I know most of my country monitors are on this platform. And with some of the things I have shared with you, I think I have shared a report of what is happening in Tanzania, where they are even having local gender monitors across the country to help them coordinate women's group to engage with the GCF processes in their country. These are some of the best practices also from our Gender Monitors Network. And the CSO Readiness Programme is very, very important. It prepares the CSOs for engaging with their NDAs at country level and all the relevant stakeholders in the GCF processes. And at this stage, I think I'll call upon Jim to give us what the GCF CSO Readiness Programme is all about and how it has mainstreamed gender. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Titi. Jean-Paul, you should be able to share your screen and start your presentation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Titi, for introducing me and also for your good input to this webinar. And it's also grateful to see that we have all these different participants from across the African region or other part of the world. My name is Jean-Paul Brice Affana. I am originally from Cameroon, and I work with Germanwatch, which is a civil society organization based in Germany, engaged in doing advocacy for equity between the global north and the global south in the way we collaborate and work for development processes and objectives. And my main portfolio in the organization is to work on climate finance and development with a focus on the Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund, as well as the international climate finance architecture. I would like to stress first, as Titi also said, that the reason why we found this webinar relevant is because there are so many synergies between the work we do, between the work that WEDO does, both ends, all the actors in the African region, that also align with what Germanwatch does as a civil society organization, with a focus on ensuring the readiness of civil society to the Green Climate Fund and other funds. That's why, for example, we also have a project focusing on the Adaptation Fund, which is the Adaptation Fund NGO network, supporting civil society organizations and groups across the world, around the world, to engage in the fund. And that justify also why we have this civil society readiness to the Green Climate Fund that we are implementing since 2016, 3 years soon. And how the project has contributed to mainstream gender and women roles in the GCF finance activities is what I would like to address as part of this webinar, as a complementary contribution to what Titi already brought on the table. I hope you can all see my screen. It should be the case. Then I will go to the next slide. Why African civil society should actually get ready for engaging with the Green Climate Fund. There are many rationales that justify our mandate here, and Titi also already raised many of them. Africa is a priority region for the GCF. The GCF would like to see African nations, as well as least developed countries, small island developing states, to become more targeted by the fund resources and the capacity support that the funds provide. And that's one of the reasons why we also recognize in the GCF funding mandate, which is in the governing instrument of the fund, that the engagement of stakeholders from civil society and the private sector is really important for ensuring that the fund is able to deliver its objectives. Also, we have to remember that scaling up existing civil society capacities is important so that we can involve CSOs in advocating for ambitious GCF projects and programs and other funded activities. And of course, there's so much expertise and experience that civil society already has that we have to mobilize, strengthen, and value in order to really achieve this transformation of GCF projects and programs, but also to ensure the accountability of the national authorities and implementing actors responsible for GCF projects and programs around the world, especially in the African region. And that's why we came together with this project, which works with 5 organizations around 5 African countries. We have GAGGA initiative based in Ghana. We have ASVT, Association des enseignants des sciences de la vie et de la terre, based in Morocco. We have CISONEX, Civil Society Network on Climate Change, which is based in Malawi. We have ENDA Energy based in Senegal. We have the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, PACJA, based in Kenya. And in these 5 countries, these organizations, civil society organizations and network really implement and support the project implementation. And the project is coordinated by Germanwatch and CARE International, with the support of the national offices of care in these various countries. We also have a partner supporting us to do dissemination of experience and learning around the project, which is the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities based in the Philippines. And all these various actors work towards developing readiness materials that facilitate CSO understanding and engagement, such as issue brief, fact sheet, toolkits. We already published 2 fact sheets, and we are about to publish 2 thematic issue brief on the GCF and also a toolkit. We also support this CSO engagement in the 5 countries that I mentioned with a national engagement approach. And of course, we value the experience through regional and global activities using approaches like webinars, Pan-African conferences, regional conferences. How do we do that? I already started to talk about the first thing that was very important to do was to assess the state of play of the GCF in those focus countries. What is the situation? How is civil society part of the GCF? Is it really existing that CSOs have opportunities to engage in the GCF related discussion? After having assessed the state of play, we have elaborated the conceptual material I talked about. And then we went to organizing national workshops across the 5 focus countries. And then we brought this experience at the regional level by organizing regional workshops. We had 1 regional workshop in Uganda, another one in Côte d'Ivoire. And we also organized these webinars where we can share experience, disseminate information and knowledge. And of course, Titi also stressed that it's very important to ensure the participation of civil society, including gender and women groups in regional discussion about the GCF. We have, for example, those regional structure dialogues of the GCF happening across the regions, where stakeholders, GCF stakeholders come together, discuss, exchange, and strengthen their engagement and interaction, and also becoming more active by interacting with key players and other CSOs working on the GCF. Then the international engagement through discussion and policy reflection around the GCF policies and framework. And we have those key policies that are really relevant for civil society, including the gender equality and social inclusion policy. But also the project has supported the participation of civil society representatives to the GCF board meetings. And of course, also engaging with the GCF CSO constituency, like most of the organization behind this participating in this webinar. I'm sure they are aware that this is GCF CSO constituency that they can be part of. And also valuing the experience of the project during side events and international events and conferences like the climate change conference organized by the UN. Then we, throughout the implementation of this project, there were key findings that came out. One of them is really like, it's important to know the local context. It's really important to know what's going on in your country. How can you be part of the existing structures, how to identify them, and how to find the relevant entry point. When you are able to do that, then you can really easily address the green interests of civil society within your country, because we have realized that there's a really green interest among civil society to engage in a green climate fund, but there's a massive task behind that that makes it also difficult, because this interest is also related to different level of interest. It's not only like there's an interest and this could be answered or addressed in a way that all CSOs are satisfied, but there are always differences. Working together is key. Creating synergies, collaborating, interacting, sharing experience, knowledge, expertise is really relevant, and it's not only relevant among civil society, it's also relevant among the different GCF stakeholders, such as the national institution, the implementing actors, the GCF secretariat, the GCF board, because they all have this common goal of achieving transformation in the way we address climate change across the countries in the developing world. Another finding here is that civil society organization can really bring value in the GCF. They have expertise that they can put on the table. They can help GCF implementing actors to know what's going on in their countries, in their communities. They can help monitoring how the projects are implemented, how objectives are achieved. They can support the accountability of the national implementing actors. All of this will be really helpful to make sure that there's a strong presence of civil society, but also that there's a strong presence of the on-the-ground experience and expertise which is needed. Overcoming challenges, there are so many challenges existing when it comes to engage with the GCF, but they can be overcome. One of them is, for example, the communication constraint. Sometimes it's difficult for civil society to have access to information from their national government and other actors. And we also have this complexity around the GCF. It's a complex process, but it's understandable. And that's why we have these materials to facilitate the understanding, the comprehension of the GCF. But also, how do we address the limited human and financial resources? We don't have so many experts around the world on the GCF. Just a couple of CSOs follow the GCF, and a few of them engage actively in the fund. And we have this difficulty that to be able to attend board meetings or regional gatherings, you need to have financial resources. How do we address that? Another finding here is that it's really important to invest in civil society roles because making civil society ready is an essential component of broader readiness around the GCF. When civil society are ready, they can easily support national stakeholders and implementing entities of the GCF finance activities. So it has to be addressed. From the previous learning of the project, where do we go with this project? Of course, I already talked about this limited access to information, the restricted participation in GCF activities and board meetings, interrupted interaction with other GCF stakeholders, lack of capacity and collaboration, etc. But all of this show that we could actually reach a meaningful engagement of civil society organization in the GCF when we make it as a dynamic process. It's not for granted, but it could be achievable when we make it as a dynamic process, taking into consideration all the challenges. Those challenges must be overcome for sure, and this will help boosting CSO readiness on the GCF across the developing countries. There's also a need to elaborate effective ideas, creative tools, engaging and innovative strategies to accelerate mutual learning and building GCF CSO readiness across countries, and to recognize the roles that every specific group could play. And I will say that we also learn that we can collectively ensure that readiness activities funded by the GCF build in country-specific civil society as a target partner, but this is a question. How do we bring the GCF to also strengthen the readiness of civil society? The GCF, Titi also stressed that in her intervention, has a readiness program and support program, readiness and preparatory support program in place, but that really focus more on the national institutions to become ready for the accreditation with the GCF and to become ready to access the GCF funding in order to implement projects and programs. But we need to have a more strategic approach of the fund itself to also build the capacity of non-state actors, such as private sector, civil society. There's a private sector facility in the GCF which encourage and support the engagement of private sector, but mainly in this, we get the funding, we implement project on behalf of the GCF. But that has to be developed further. Coming back to the title of our webinar, it's about gender responsive engagement with the GCF. What about gender and women in this project of Germanwatch? The project actually was aware from the beginning that we have to engage the different type of groups. We have to really make sure that all different kind of stakeholders have a role to play in this project. And that's why we mainstream gender throughout the project activities. We have involved women and gender groups in those activities across the target countries and the sub-region in the African continent. And every time that we engage women. We also gave them key roles to play in these national activities. And when you observe how the project was implemented, you have women really playing key roles, like leading workshops, facilitating the mobilization of stakeholders, bringing expertise contribution on the table, having these roles to play during the webinars and the national and regional conferences that we organize, but also being able to engage in the lobby work around the GCF by interacting with the GCF stakeholders like national designated authorities or focal point in their countries. We empowered gender advocates and women roles in the GCF in different ways. For example, on the 9th of May, just a couple of days ago, we had a regional webinar in French, which was organized by Enda Energy. And that webinar had a focus on how do we mainstream gender in the GCF and its finance activities and projects and programs. And we brought together different actors like the NDA from Senegal, GCF Gender Monitor, also on board. Zainabou Sekda was there. She's a GCF Gender Monitor for Burkina Faso. And they all shared their experience and also updated the participant about where are we in terms of policy related to gender empowerment in the GCF. It's a key topic. Gender is a key theme in the activities undertaken across the countries and the regions. And we also have a fellowship program in place in our project, which support representatives of civil society to participate in GCF board meetings. And as part of this fellowship program, we supported a number of women to participate to the 23rd UN Climate Change Conference in Bonn in 2017. And we also supported recently one young woman to participate to the 22nd GCF board meeting in Korea. Because we are aware, and we always try to have an approach where we do 50-50 to have this very good balance between the gender. But of course, sometimes we face difficulties because either the organizations we work with have different policies in place than Germanwatch, but we still push for having a very good between the different gender involved. Aligning national actions with GCF policy discussion and decision is very important as well. I agree. That's why we engage our partners in this policy discussion. We really make sure that we link the national, regional discussion engagement to the international one because it's key. And one thing is, for example, that we advocate as part of this project for an effective and soon to be adopted gender equality and social inclusion policy. The GCF board hasn't adopted that policy yet, but has a gender policy and action plan in place, which serves as a provisional framework for making sure that this happens. And that's what Titi said. For example, when you elaborate a project proposal, you have to make sure that you have a gender action plan and a policy in place, but also in your institution as an accredited entity to the GCF. I will end my presentation with this few takeaway. I think it's important to really have something to capture at the end of this discussion as what is our key message. Ensuring that gender is mainstream throughout the GCF is not something for granted. We have to admit, because sometimes even project proposal that or program proposal that come to the table of the GCF board are very weak in the way they want to engage women and the way they want to recognize the importance of gender. And that's why we keep advocating for stronger ways of making that happen. And as a few takeaways, I would say information sharing and communications is very important for women and gender groups to be aware of. When the information flows, it means they have more opportunities to be aware of what's going on in their countries, in their region, and to be part of the current discussion. Meaningful participation and inclusion. I was talking about this social inclusion policy that the GCF board should adopt. It's really key. We have to make sure that the participation is not just about being there in the room, but that it has to be meaningful, which means roles have to be defined, roles have to be played, and impact has to be made. Capacity building is always required. We have to build the capacity in an ongoing way. And of course, keeping this permanent dialogue and interaction with other GCF key players and GCF stakeholders in the countries and regions is necessary. And I said recently, just a few seconds ago, that the policy currents has to be there. We have to align the national action, the regional engagement with the international policy discussion and decision. There should be a policy currents around how we engage civil society and gender advocates and women groups in the GCF. And of course, partnership and collaboration. We have to create synergies among each other. And we also have to be aware, as I said earlier, about the different level of interest. Some civil society organizations would like to just monitor the GCF policies, how they are framed, how they are implemented. Other organizations are interested to become accredited to the GCF so that they can implement projects and programs themselves as accredited entities. Others would like to be executing entities, which means they would like to receive responsibility from the accredited entities to be part of the project implementation, while others, as Titi said, could have expertise required to become delivery partners. But at the same time, we also have some CSOs that are mainly interested about monitoring the implementation of GCF projects and programs by making sure that things are delivered as expected. And they want to be part of this accountability mechanism. So we have to be aware of this different level of interest, because when you organize a workshop, you bring together gender advocates, women groups, civil society organizations that have different interests. You cannot fulfill their expectation. And at the end of the day, you have an activity, but you don't have an impact. So you have to define and identify these interests early on so that you could better structure your target groups according to their level of interest. And with that, I thank you all for your attention, and I will be happy later on to address any question or comment.
Thank you so much, Jean-Paul. We have several questions from the audience that have already come in on the chat, so I wanted to give them a chance to voice their questions so that we can move straight into the discussion. Chinma, I believe you had the first question. Would you like to ask it? You can unmute yourself. All right. Unfortunately, it seems like they have left the webinar already, but I do want to ask the question anyway, because I think it's very relevant, and it has to do with what you were bringing up, Titi, about the gender monitors at a local country level. Can you talk more about how folks can engage in the overall groups that you are coordinating and become country level gender monitors?
With the Africa Gender Monitor, what you need to do is that we have a listserv. You can sign you up onto that listserv so that you can receive most of the information that we share with our country monitors. If your country is yet to have a country monitor, then we have our terms of reference, which is out there. We can resend it. So if you think you meet those terms of reference, then you can apply. And then we have a committee that looks at it and then decide whether you be a country monitor or not. But for local women's group who wants to get engaged, you must first of all link up with your local, the country monitor, gender country monitor, and then work with your country monitor to design the kind of outreach and awareness raising activity that you want to do. For instance, what we've been able to do in Nigeria, we have been able to send out a form for those who are interested. What we call our platform is called the Climate Finance Platform, and which in the next few weeks we are going to start rolling out. We have been trying to talk to some organizations across Nigeria because we don't still yet have the funding to do a national workshop, but we felt that it would be better to start doing state level awareness, and then by the time we're ready, we can now do the national stakeholders workshop. So we have been talking to some of those who have signed up to be part of that session. Apart from that, also we have also tried to talked to those who are in the private sector who felt that they needed to know more about what GCF can offer and how they can access GCF. Some of them want to know more about the private sector facility. Some of them also want to know whether they can go directly to the GCF and access the funds. And more importantly, there are some private sector organizations that are also thinking around having a gender action plan for their organization. I would say currently I'm trying to put together a gender action plan for a private sector organization in Nigeria. These are some of the possibilities what can happen at the local level, because a lot of them are beginning to understand that for you to get engaged in the GCF processes and to be able to access funds, you as an institution must think about your gender policy and action plan. You must be a company or an institution that ensures that gender is mainstream into whatever you are doing, and that's the way we've been moving. I know a Maria from Tanzania is here. They have done something very significant, which we in Nigeria are also going to copy. If a Maria is here, she can also share what they're doing in Tanzania. And I think I have Faustina too on the webinar. Either of them could be able to share what they're doing in their country as a country monitors. Hello? Can everybody hear me? Is Faustina there?
Faustina, would you like to come
in? Yeah,
we
can hear you.
What about Maria from Tanzania?
I'm here.
I think okay, please share what you're doing in Tanzania.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks to presenters. It has been really useful. For us, what we did first was to share the information with the women rights and environmental groups organization, just to express their interest, those who would like to join the sharing knowledge, just to get an understanding what GCF is and how that can influence women participation from different parts and angles. And that first stage enables us to have a group of civil society which expressed interest. Out of 60, or probably 15 or 30 responded. And then we started to share with them the webinars, which was initially presented by WEDO and other groups. We miss those ones, but we find that to share that first instance information before starting the conversation would shed some light to them. So they registered to the web, they registered and then they started to share readiness and understanding it. And after that, we started to visit regions that we identified, because Tanzania is sort of a big country. So we identified five regions where we thought we could be able to work with these national organizations, of whom then they'll be able to share the knowledge with local NGOs. So each region identified other 15 organizations working on women's rights, from CBOs, grassroots organization, and national and regional and non-governmental organizations. And of course, issues of funding was part of why we chose a limited group, so that they can be able to share the knowledge in the first instance. So we were able to reach almost 60 women and environmental groups in 5 regions. And in meantime, we've been engaging other big organizations which are working on climate change per se, and we have already received an invitation to go to meet and share with them what we are doing. And our aim is to create this partnership from what we have as women rights groups and them as climate change per se organization, to see how we can bridge and bring more other civil society organizations into conversations. And just today, I received a confirmation from one of our colleagues, those national coordinators, we call them national coordinators, from our NDA, who have responded to our letter. And he's inviting us now to go and share with them what we have been doing and how we can engage with NDA and these other organizations that we are planning to work with. But again, from those 5 organizations that we've been working with, and these other 15 sub-regional organizations from the ward and district, we are thinking of having a national forum where we are going to bring other stakeholders such as the UNDP, the United Nations Development Fund, the UNEP, Environmental Program Fund, the big funding women organizations and other governmental, such as National Environmental Committee, who is already an accredited institution, to speak about the issues that how we can bridge the gaps on women participation, how we can do the monitoring, and what are the issues that need to be discussed, such as when the proposal are written, the technicalities and the massive work as GCF. John spoke it so clearly. Needs a lot of understanding, and how can we come in as women groups, as environmental groups, and as experts in our gender issues to drive the agenda, to have the platform, and sitting on a table to bring this expertise during the proposal, but during even the implementation of the process. But in a nutshell, that's what we've started to do.
Thank you,
Hello?
Maria. Yeah, is Faustina there? Yeah, thank you so much. Really grateful. Do we still have Faustina there?
Unfortunately, it looks like Faustina is now offline. But I'm so glad we were able to get that amazing example, Maria.
So if you have questions.
Yeah, so we had another few questions that were already queued up. Hassan, would you like to ask your question? It looks like Hassan might have put his question in there as he too was departing the webinar early. He wanted to just talk about how women can benefit from gender responsive GCF readiness awareness. And I think that speaks to our overall idea that as we engage more with the GCF and its mechanisms and influence both its processes as well as the projects that come out of the GCF, we hope that the projects are going to create more benefits, more co-benefits, better reach those that they need to be serving, including women, as well as other groups of people, so that the projects ultimately really reflect the need that we see in the communities. And I think otherwise we've really talked about kind of this overall idea of gender responsive GCF awareness within this webinar. So I want to move on to the next question. Amal, would you like to share your question?
Hello, Tara.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Tara, I think let me add to the answers you are giving concerning what women groups can benefit. One thing that stands out when you get engaged into this process is that once you start getting engaged with your NDA, you stand a chance of helping them to mold the kind of proposals and also be an executing entity as one of the organizations that will help your country to implement some aspects of their proposals that is going to get to the GCF. That is one of the important opportunities. And once you start implementing, it means that you have the opportunity to ensure that gender is mainstream, and you also ensure that climate finance benefits women in your country. Thank you.
Absolutely. Jean-Paul, do you have anything to add?
I think I fully agree with the previous answers to that question. It's also about we need a better understanding of what do we mean by gender, what do we mean by advocating for gender. I think there's still a wrong perception around this issue. Most of the time it's about how we talk about engaging more women, having a higher number of women involved. It's not about that. It's about gender. It goes beyond just having women in a room, women in an activity, or ensuring 50% of women, 50% of men. No. It's not that what we aim for here. It's really about having strong policies that consider the question of gender, that can respond better to the inclusion of gender throughout the activities and processes of the GCF. And I think it's also hard to really achieve that goal because in so many different countries across the African continent or the region, the perception of the understanding around the issue is misinterpreted. So we have to also find a way how to maybe kind of elaborate the first, kind of information material that helps to better understand what we mean. I think that's something WEDO should probably consider with the different partners involved in the project, like a thematic brief or a fact sheet explaining what does it mean when it comes to gender consideration, gender responsive policies, what are we looking for? When that understanding is addressed, maybe a kind of capacity program could be elaborated around and even proposed to the GCF, because I think one opportunity for gender advocates here is that the GCF doesn't have a strong capacity building program around gender responsive approach. It doesn't exist. It's a very key point for WEDO to approach the GCF Secretariat to make such a proposal, and the GCF Secretariat could propose the idea to the board, like it happened with PwC. They approached the Secretariat. They are now responsible for implementing and developing the readiness program of the GCF in the capacity building aspect. So I think that would help a lot before going to the, okay, now we have gender consideration throughout the project, throughout the national policies, and throughout the accredited entities, because we are not there yet. A lot has to be done, and the guidance and the guidelines have to come from the GCF itself, through its board and through its secretariat. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's so much to do to much more integrate gender into all of the policies and processes so that it's ultimately reflected appropriately in the outcomes, and with an understanding that gender, again, is much more beyond this idea of, 50% women and 50% men, which is something that we still unfortunately see being the key or primary feature in many of the gender action plans that are associated with the GCF, rather than understanding that it's about women and men in their full diversity, and understanding all of the different groups and intersecting identities and needs that should be considered as part of any process. So when we're talking about the processes of inclusion and the ways in which people and groups can and should be contributing to the formation of plans, to the design of projects and programs, to the entire engagement process, all the way into the ways in which this is actually solidified into the actual projects, and the ways in which they're implemented and ultimately even monitored and evaluated, with, again, that really key engagement from all of the affected communities and groups with a really strong gender lens. So I'm really glad that you brought up that point, John Paul, because it is absolutely a crucial one. And I want to also just say that even though there's a long way to go, spaces like this and conversations like this are a key part of us getting there. Just the basic ability to start recognizing and understanding more about the GCF processes, such as readiness, is really the first step to engaging further, so that we can really push that needle and create an entirely new approach to gender within the GCF. I would now like to pivot to our next question. Amal, would you like to ask your question? Amal, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? If not, we can ask it from the chat.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. It was very, very interesting. My first question was regarding the fact that we are not part of the network Sciences et Vie de la Terre. It means, and we are not the only NGO or association in that situation. So unfortunately, we cannot get the information regarding all the presentation that you have made, and it seems that the information is not getting out if you're not part of the network. So how we can engage, because there are many associations who are engaged also in sustainable development, but linked also with the gender. For example, myself, I am part of an NGO who works on the well-being of animals and the rural side. And it seems that all the women and children over there needs help and needs implementation about the situation. So, of course, how we can get engaged, first of all, and secondly, how many other NGOs like me can be trained, because we are very much in need to be trained about that. And of course, the problem is that many of our NGOs or associations are not English speakers, more French and Arabic speakers. So that was my three questions. And the second one, and the last one, will be who is our focal point here in Morocco, as we don't have any information about that. Thank you.
Titi, would you like to start off? Perhaps starting.
I'm not. I think for the person in Morocco, I think Zainabu will know about the Gender Monitor for Morocco, because Morocco is part of the Anglophone Gender Monitors network. So maybe afterwards we should be able to send you the email of Zainabu, so that we can get in touch with Zainabu on the to know who actually is the country monitor, so that you can get engaged. And concerning the capacity building, I would say you look out for some of this our webinars, because for now we are still going to be using the webinar platform to deliver a lot of training on gender aspect of GCF. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the
Hello?
Yes.
To what? I think Anne has a question.
I would like to answer to the question about how the previous question, sorry. I would like to suggest to our colleague who asked the question about how can she and her organization be involved in Morocco. She could also contact, are you aware of ASVT, Association des Anciens de la Vie et de la Terre, des Sciences de la Vie et de la Terre?
Yes, absolutely. But unfortunately, we are not part of this network.
Yeah, I understand. It's also it's not easy to be part of all networks or to be informed about all existing networks and platforms right away. And I'm happy that this webinar could help you to also know more. I would suggest you could send me an email. I have shared my email address in this webinar at the end of my presentation, and then I could introduce you to the organization in Morocco, because they are one of our country partners, and we work with them since 2016 to make civil society from Morocco ready to engage with the GCF. And as Titi said, also connection with Zainabu Sekda will make sense, because she's in charge of the Francophone countries. And I get your view also, is that the civil society in Africa is so broad, so large, that it's really difficult to reach out to all of them. And that's why we also organize regularly webinars like the one we are in now, to be able to reach out to relevant stakeholders and those interested to become part of the discussion and activities.
I would also say on that note as well that we are trying to push at a higher level to encourage the GCF Secretariat, to encourage the NDAs to be very expansive in the ways in which they consider stakeholder engagement, and not necessarily just connecting with one organization or one network and assuming that that's representative. And so this is to some of the advocacy that we're doing at different levels, because we ultimately want a standard for all NDAs to be very intentional in the ways in which they try and find truly representative engagement with the broad civil society within their country, rather than simply doing a single meeting or with a single organization. Wanted to also speak to some of your questions about language. And one of the things that we did last year is there was a webinar series that I know Maria mentioned when she was talking about some of the capacity building and awareness doing that they were doing in Tanzania. Our webinar series on women's rights and climate finance, we were able to translate into both Spanish and French. We now, of course, have the Francophone group so that we can provide some specific resources and conversations and discussions that are happening in French as well. And so we are trying to build out more opportunities in multiple languages. However, at the GCF level, we've still not seen the level of translation that we would want to see in terms of, for example, they have not yet translated the readiness evaluation that Titi was referencing throughout her report. They have not yet translated that into Spanish or French, even though there's a clear space on their website where they intend to do that in the future. The website's not fully translated, and even things such as the gender policy and other policies have not been fully translated. So that's something as well that we're really trying to advocate for with the GCF Secretariat, because it is really crucial that we ultimately are able to have all of these resources in multiple languages. Anne also wants to share something about Morocco, so I'm going to let her come in now. Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tara, and thank you everybody. Sorry for joining in late. I just wanted to add 2 points. So in Morocco, indeed, there are many other organizations that have been involved with gender and climate change and looking at especially the GCF projects that have been awarded to Morocco. And I wanted to inform you, Amal, that there was a group of civil society organizations trained by the CNDH, the National Council for Human Rights, and WECF in 2017 on gender and climate change and SDGs. And this group is still active. And so it would be great that you reach out to Amal El-Idrissi from CNDH to see what's their intention on acting in a real have some continuation from the trainings that were made in 2017. There was specifically a training on the GCF and on climate finance generally in September of 2017 with this group. And there are about 20 people which are heads of civil society organization, most of them women's organization, but also some people working in municipalities on gender budgeting, for example. So that's one point I wanted to inform you about in Morocco. And also concerning the recruiting some more monitors across Africa, there will be a summit of non-state actors for the climate in Accra in October, so in Ghana. And during this summit, there is a possibility to present the group of the gender GCF monitors, both Anglophone and Francophone, that is being set up, and all the work that is being done at the moment. So I know that Titi is coordinating a proposal for climate change. So the non-state actors for the climate is climate change. And this summit is lasting 3 days in October. And I believe that's a really good opportunity to present in a very tangible and concrete manner what is expected from a gender monitor, what is being done, and what it brings for African civil society to engage in this process. And there are really different opportunities to be highlighted as a good practice example for climate change. And that's the call for proposal that is being launched, has been launched 1 month ago and is being conducted at the moment, and where Titi with hopefully my support and others are going to submit a contribution. But there is also a possibility to organize a side event, and maybe I am thinking it could be a great opportunity to try and make a workshop or a capacity building element during this summit. So that's what I wanted to share with all of you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Does anyone else have any questions or comments that they would like to come in with?
Yes, I have a question. Hello?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm Karima from Algeria. I was involved in these two groups, a French group and also English group. And I want to just to know how can we share experience and project with other member of this group, GCF, because in Algeria we have implemented a lot of projects to from women. I'm a president of Women Association in Green Economy, and also I have worked a lot with this. And I want to share experience. And can you give me, yes, can you explain to me how can we share this? Hello?
Yes. Titi, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah. Let me say something here. For you to share your experience, just like you said, you are a part of the two networks. So we have monthly meetings where we share our experience and what we are doing on ground. And that would be a very good opportunity for you to share your experience also. And if there are some important climate change meetings where you're sure you are going to be there, and a lot of us are going to be there, of course, most of the time we always find a space to do a training on GCF. At the last African Climate Change Week, we called on people who were around to be part of the meeting. And we have a sizable number of people who attended that meeting. And at that platform, you can also share your experience and you can have deeper conversation around what you're doing and what you can do more, and then also build more of your capacity about gender and GCF processes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jean-Paul, do you have any other channels or ideas for sharing experiences within this network of folks that are trying to engage in the GCF?
I would just advise everyone to join the GCF CSO constituency. I mean, it will be good when we share the follow-up information about the webinar to include how to join the GCF CSO constituency, because that's where a lot of communication, information, and opportunities to engage circulate. And it will be relevant for all of us to be part of it, because that's like the official formal channel for civil society engagement with the GCF at the international level. And from there, you could also be aware about what's going on at the national level, regional level in your country, in your region, so that you don't have to always find that information yourself. Like Tara said, for example, that the GCF also should be able to work towards engaging more and bringing more stakeholders in countries together. And I know, for example, that at the moment, the independent evaluation unit of the GCF Secretariat is conducting consultation across different countries, across a selected number of countries, including many in the African region, where they are meeting with stakeholders and they have approached the active observer of civil society to the GCF to recommend them some civil society organization they could also invite to this consultation. So when you are aware of this kind of opportunities, then you will be able to easily engage and also talk directly to the GCF Secretariat representative. That would be my advice. So try to find out how to register to be part of the GCF CSO mailing list. which is not difficult, and I'm sure Tara and Titi will make sure that that information is included in the follow-up communication with all participants.
Absolutely, we will. And I think it's really important to note that with this listserv, you do not have to formally be an observer to the GCF. Even though if your organization wants to sign up at an organizational level to be an observer, that's very helpful, but there are still ways for you to fully engage, to sign on to particular statements, to even attend meetings under the umbrella of another organization without necessarily being an observer. So there's no real barrier here. It's just sending an email to get on that listserv, and that's the first step to this level of engagement, as Jean-Paul said, kind of at this international level. And so when I talked a few minutes ago about advocacy to the GCF Secretariat, a lot of this advocacy is happening through this listserv. It's organized through this listserv, and it's happening at the level of really trying to push at the board meetings and in our interactions with board members, with the Secretariat, with the independent units for certain ideas and practices to be implemented so that they do cascade down to the country level and to the local level. And so this is kind of a crucial piece of making those connections from what your experience might be in your country and the challenges and difficulties you might see there, and being able to raise that to a higher level so that we can create a more responsive process overall. I would like to open up the floor for anyone else that wants to come in.
Yes, Sarah.
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Caroline. Yes. I just want to say that I am very, very surprised at the way things are going, because we are accredited to the GCF since 2011. And then a lot of things are ongoing within countries, and then we cannot be linked up. The last time I spoke with Titi in Nairobi to sign us up to this process, and we couldn't get any email. I'm just surprised things are just going within countries, and we're not supposed to work in silos. You don't expect us as an individual organization to move into the NDA to start engaging individually. It's good civil society coordinate, then we go as a team. So we want a proper coordination mechanism that is well spelled out for members to engage in this process. Then we'll be able to know. If you are signing up, there should be a link that is created for members who are interested to sign up to the process and then engage. We don't have to be sending email, then somebody decides on how to engage, to sign you up. If they don't like, then they don't sign you up. I mean, it doesn't tell well to engage in any platform. I receive email consecutively from the GCF Secretariat, and we are following up on all the issues, but not from the CSO, particularly the gender constituency of it. So let's have a clear document detailing on how to engage even with the GCF Gender Monitor network and all that. If these are not in place, we can all put our heads together and make something out so that the members will be able to find it easy getting on board. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback, Caroline. Yes, we will include all of the information. Go ahead, Titi.
Yeah, Caroline, thank you for the question. I remember that you actually talked to me in Nairobi, and afterwards I sent out a call, which was on Facebook for over a month for people to sign up. I can remember about 50 organizations signed up. I'm not sure whether you are aware, it was on my the timeline on the Facebook for a very long time.
I'm not in your Facebook.
No, you are there, I see you.
Facebook.
No, wait, let me finish.
But
so it was a Google document, and it puts people together. But I have a lot of people who have accused me. I thought you didn't sign up. So how would I know that you have an interest? But what we are doing is not as if we have done anything big for now. We are just moving into the system. All I did was personally, first of all, to get myself acknowledged with the NDA.
And a lot of you know that it's not so simple to really get the attention of the NDA. It is now that I'm getting the attention of the NDA that is now working with me. And we are now strategizing on how to do different awareness raising across the country. Because for now, we still have some challenge as to funding, doing any national workshop. So we have agreed, we are just mapping out to make sure that all those organizations that have signed up, we will now meet them where they are and then talk to them. For instance, now last week I spoke to Policy Alert in Uyo, who has agreed that, Titi, yes, we have the space. All you need to come in, we'll call the civil society and you talk to them and you tell them about gender, GCF and everything. And from there, we'll take it off. So we are talking to some organizations across the states and across geopolitical zone who could host us for those kind of awareness meetings. So if don't be too annoyed with me, don't worry, the information will get to you. And I'm going to sign you up to the Gender Monitors Network immediately after this meeting. Please, once I send you the call to join, please join on the Google group. And a lot of you want to join the network, please send your email to me at titiakosa@gmail.com. I will call you to join. And if you cannot get to join, I will add you to the list. Thank you very much. Hello?
Yes, we will be following up after this presentation with a link to several of the different resources that have already been shared. For example, the Women's Rights and Climate Finance webinar series, the briefs that Jean-Paul mentioned that Germanwatch has been creating that specifically speak to this idea of CSO engagement in the GCF. And I know that they're coming out with their toolkit very soon as well. Yes, there is some sound and I can't quite figure out where it's coming from. I think that might have just taken care of it though.
Can I say something? I'm on the webinar, but I'm using a phone from the US to join in. I'm not able to join in on my laptop. And I did ask a question before that are your activities also taking into consideration those who have been working on gender in specific sectors? I did ask that for fisheries, for example. I know a number of people in Nigeria who have done a lot of work, who belong to gender associations outside Nigeria that has to do specifically with the sector, with the fisheries sector. And well, I want to be grateful that most of us on that group just got to know about your activities during the week, and we decided to be part of this webinar. So how do we go forward? Because we are interested in gender issues, we are interested in our sector, which is the fisheries sector, and we are also interested in climate change. Like I did post on the message chat that there is a symposium coming up in Nigeria, in Akure, in September, on climate change adaptation. Are you going to be there? Are you going to see how you can be part of the program? It's strictly for fisheries and so on, but still do something that we make people interested in your activities and participate and contribute, because the people that belong to this sector are professionals and have connections. And I believe that whatever we are doing in any country, the issue of policy, how to support with policies, government policies that will make our work have the desired or impact is also very important. And so I don't know how we can connect with Titi, Miss Titi, after this meeting and say engage forward on how we can have a good structure that is workable, that will have an impact, and that we can monitor. Because if we cannot monitor the impact, then everybody will just be working in isolation or at cross purposes, and we will never at any time be able to have concrete achievements to show. But if we can all come together and have monitoring indices for our successes on this program, I think it will be very useful. Thank you. My name is Ariola.
Thank you, Ariola. Titi, do you want to come in response to that? Titi, are you there?
No. We really want, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can.
Thank you, Ariola, for that question. And I'm happy that you are joining this webinar and we are connecting through this webinar. Please, immediately after this webinar, send me an email. My email is titiakosa@gmail.com. I really want your group to be part of the Gender Network for Nigeria and for Africa. And for your program that is coming up, that will be a good platform for us to do a small capacity building around the GCF and the gender dimensions. And so we can continue to discuss about this and then plan towards that. And then we can see how other broader civil society from Southwest also can be part of that meeting. I really appreciate this. You are welcome. And please, you can, just once you get my email, please send me your email also so that I can link you up to the Gender Monitors Network, the online group. And then we take it up from there. And then in Nigeria, very soon we are setting up the WhatsApp group. So that would be easy for us to have that free flow of information at the local level. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Please. This is directed to Titi. Please, some of us have also dropped our emails on the chat room for this webinar. Please, maybe you can get our emails there so that we can be linked up. I'm also from Nigeria, and I'm hearing this for the first time today, which is very surprising to me.
Thank you so much. I'll take up all your emails. Please, you must know that I got into this position early this year. I was not in charge of the Africa Monitors Network listserv, and I've just been given access to it. And you must also note that there is a limit to how many people I can put to join. But the most important thing I can do is when I get your email, I can send you an invite. Please, once you see the invite, just link up. It will be very important for you to also link up through that invite. You can be rest assured that you're going to be part of what is happening. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay.
Titi, we are not trying to complain about what you have done. We appreciate what you have done so far. Being on this webinar shows that you have done something and that you have been able to reach us, and we appreciate this very much. We are just wondering how we can move forward and ensure that gender mainstreaming in Nigeria, because I was hearing the things that have been done in Ghana, the things that have been done in Kenya, and the things that have been done in Tanzania and all that, which I appreciate so much, and I would want Nigeria to even do better. So we're not complaining about you at all. Please try to understand that. We appreciate what you have to say.
Yes, I do understand. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, Tara. Can I add to the discussion?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Hawa from Ghana. I just want to add to what Titi said. Being someone who has also been engaged with the GCF Gender Monitors group, frankly, the group is just evolving. Initially, Masan was in charge and the membership was very few. And then at some point, we agreed that we'll have coordinators for each country. So a TOR was developed for country monitors. And each monitor was supposed to galvanize membership in country, and so that they can put together a kind of needs assessment of what they need within the country, whether it's capacity building or whatever it is. And that all those things were supposed to now be channeled to the leadership of the Gender Monitors group. And so I would like to add that given that there are so many people interested in Nigeria and other countries, Titi, I would like to suggest that the country monitors group begin to work, and then maybe see how in Nigeria you can mobilize all the people who are interested into the Nigerian Gender Monitors group, and they can also feed into the general Africa Women Gender Monitors group. So I'd like to say that it's still evolving, and so it's not like I saw someone asking what the coordination mechanism is. We're still the Gender Monitors group is still evolving, and so all suggestions to ensure that it works well, I believe, will be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. That was indeed so well said. It is definitely a group that is still evolving and emerging and trying to find new ways to connect and coordinate. Go ahead, Titi.
Yeah, thank you, Awa, for that input. I really appreciate it. Just like Awa said, we're still evolving, and there's room for better coordination and better mobilization. And just like I said, everybody that has shown interest, they are going to be part of it. I just said it when I was making my presentation that I have learned a lot from what Tanzania has done for them to have local monitors. So with these local monitors, I'm going to replicate that in Nigeria so that those local monitors will help at the regional levels in Nigeria and help with the coordination. So those are some of the things that is coming out from this webinar, which I'm going to replicate. Thank you.
I would like to open the floor one last time for any final questions. All right, John Paul, could I ask for you to give a brief closing statement, just your reflections on this conversation, and then Titi, I'll ask the same of you, and then we'll close the webinar.
Yes, I just want to say that I said previously that engaging with the GCF is technical, could also be complex, but at the same time it's a good opportunity, and one should not expect the engagement of the GCF to be fully operational and ready. The GCF, the funds only started being operational in 2014, in end of 2014, honestly. So it's rather very new. In 2015, which is only 4 years ago, the GCF started approving the first project, and we already have a few of them being implemented. And that's why it's still, I would say, it's a virgin area. It's a virgin space where we still have the possibility to, it's an empty space that we still have the possibility to fulfill. We don't have to think that things should be already working well, being operational, everything should be ready. No, it's not the case. That's exactly why we have those readiness focused programs, because it's an opportunity for engaging, for being part of something, and to be able to support the fund to create this transformation. But it's really empty, and things have to be created, developed, implemented, and observed. And that's why the fund itself is still approving and elaborating policies and frameworks. I fully understand that we all want to be part of it, we all want to be included, we all want to play a role, but at the same time I will call for the understanding of those interested to also be aware that there's so much to be created, and we cannot create everything right away as one, and with the limited resources that we have. Titi is doing her best, the other gender monitors around in the other regions are doing their best, Germanwatch does its best. We only had the possibility to support 5 NGOs in 5 countries. We would have wished to support 50 NGOs in 50 countries in the African region, but we had limited resources. WEDO has limited resources, both ends tried. So it's really like, let's all understand each other, and let's partner, collaborate in the way that we can support each other. Supporting each other is very key when it comes to engaging with such a complex and new mechanism as the GCF. And my last point would be about also take your own steps. Don't always wait for others to connect you to the key players in your country. Don't always wait for others to be able to open you the doors. Also go on your own. It's like an entrepreneur. I realized that my city doesn't offer let's say maybe my city doesn't have enough playing ground and sport facilities, but I would like that to happen. What do? I start a campaign about pushing the mayor to create more sport facilities and green spaces for the citizens, instead of just complaining and then saying that the mayor doesn't do enough. So also take your own step, go ahead, find the information yourself, create the opportunities, and inform the others about what you have found so that they also can be part of it. And lastly, we are working, as I said, on a toolkit that will really help to support civil society readiness to the GCF, and that toolkit really explains a lot about the GCF and how to engage, how to become part, how to play a role. And we will be making sure that this toolkit is disseminated largely and widely. So if you see that information circulating from mid of June, please don't hesitate to download the toolkit to have a copy with you, because that will really help you. And we work on this toolkit in collaboration with all the GCF actors involved, from civil society and the secretariat as well. Like WEDO help us, both areas involved. Titi will also play a role in making sure that this really reflects and addresses the challenges existing out there. Thanks a lot. And I would like to thank you all for your time, for your commitment, and for your consideration to be part of this process, which really needs our voice and our presence.
Thank you so much, Jean-Paul. Titi?
Yeah, thank you to, I want to say a big thank you to all of you for your time, for joining this webinar. It's really quite insightful, some of the things you have shared here, and I'm going to take them forward from here. Please note that the Gender Network Monitor is open to everybody, and we will ensure that there's an inclusive process, ensuring that everybody participates and contributes what they can to make the network a better network, a network that will really speak to the issues of women and gender in GCF processes across Africa. So after this important webinar, we will take up all of your concerns and all the emails, and everybody will be linked up with the Google group. And at the national level, we would also have what we call the WhatsApp group at the local level, so that we can exchange and interact more, and also give you information about where spaces and opportunities for capacity building in the GCF and gender issues. This is very critical and crucial for a lot of us who want to get engaged, so that we can understand how to get engaged and how to do many things. And more importantly, getting engaged, having our capacity built, and then working at the local level. It's so important for us, so that we ensure that gender is not only mainstream, that concretely men and women benefit from climate finance. And this is very, very important if we don't want to leave anyone behind in achieving the sustainable development goals in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes. All right. Well,
I think I'm through.
Yes, thank you, Titi. That's a great note to end on. Thank you, everyone that joined. You will all be sent information with links to resources that were discussed, with the PowerPoint slides of this presentation, with the recording of this presentation, and with all of the relevant email addresses and information by early next week. So just give us a moment to get all of that together. Thank you so much for joining and for your questions and contributions and engagement. We really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks for your great work also, Tara. You have been fantastic in that.
Thanks, Jean-Paul.
Thank you, Tara.
Bye-bye,
thank you so much for the support. Yeah, thank you, Jean. Thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.